This is a sculpture of Valentina Blackhorse, who was a ceremonial dancer on the Navajo Nation. I was first inspired to sculpt her during the time of COVID. Valentina passed away of COVID in 2020 after being diagnosed. Just 2 or 3 days later, she passed away in Kayenta at the Kayenta Medical Center. And she left behind her husband and a 1-year-old daughter, poet Betsy Blackhorse. And when I first saw the image of her on Facebook, I was really moved and came down to Sedona to talk to John Soderberg and asked him to help me sculpt her. Back in 2020, I had come over to Sedona from New Mexico for the Sedona Film Festival, actually. And right about that time, everything started shutting down for COVID, and I was staying up in Flagstaff. And I read a story about Valentina Blackhorse, who was a young mother who was struck down with COVID, and within 2 or 3 days had passed away of COVID on the reservation in the Navajo Nation before there was a vaccine back in 2020. I had come over for the film festival and wound up having to stay in Arizona because my mom was, I had relocated my mom to Albuquerque while my Aunt Helen was in Texas. And my Aunt Helen passed away from COVID, and I wanted to move my mom over to Arizona because of all the COVID restrictions at the time. So that's how the sculpture got underway in the first place.
Can you tell us any more about this woman? Where she came from, or?
She's from the Monument Valley area, which is Kayenta, Arizona. And she was the wife of a prison guard who had contracted COVID, and she was caring for her husband when she took ill herself, and within 2 or 3 days had to go into the Kayenta Medical Center, where just within that short amount of time she lost her life as well, leaving behind her 1-year-old daughter, poet Betsy Blackhorse. And it was just a very moving story, and I read about it and approached John Soderberg about sculpting her, because I felt like her story should be remembered. She should be remembered. That's how the whole project began.
How long have you been working on this?
Well, I began work on it in actually going up to meet with the family, and I got permission to sculpt Valentina. I took photographs of both Valentina's sister and her mother for the similarities of their look. I also took pictures of her attire and so forth, their ceremonial attire that she performed in. And she was at one time Miss Navajo and had won several awards and was known in the area for her dance and various other accomplishments and so forth. When John became ill himself in January 6th of 2021, I wasn't able to continue my work, so I missed my deadline of May of 2021 to finish the sculpture. I had to put the sculpture back into storage for almost 2 years before I could start working on it again. But some details about the sculpture itself. It's been almost 4 years now in order to complete. It's almost complete now. I still have to go into the wax mold phase to achieve the bronze, but still fundraising for that. But a few details about the sculpture itself. She was a jingle dancer, and so on a particular attire they wear, there are 364 bells or jingles on the dress, one for every day of the year. And then there is a hidden one that is for the leap year every year. So there's one hidden away on the sculpture itself. Although I don't have 365 of them on her particular sculpture, I do have the hidden one on the sculpture. And then another interesting thing about this particular sculpture is that she has kind of a Mona Lisa look to her. Sometimes it looks like she has a very serious look, and sometimes at a different angle she has a nice smile, a very faint smile. So it changes depending on the direction you look at her from.
So tell me about this journey you've been on and what happened and how you've been able to finish this.
Well, first of all, I was held up by the fact that John had his mishap and wound up in the hospital for so long, and his recovery affected my progress on the piece. And then when I finally got back into the studio, things were very slow. When John passed away, I then transferred the sculpture into Jill Trenholm's studio. Essentially, the face and the top part of Valentina's sculpture was achieved prior to February of this year. And when I went into Jill's studio, I had only been working on it a matter of a few weeks when I had a medical emergency of my own, which was heart failure and a stroke, which you may be able to tell by the way I'm speaking if you knew me before. My speech was affected as well as my right arm and part of the right side of my body, which has really slowed down the how quickly I could work on the sculpture itself. A lot of the work from the neck down on this sculpture has been achieved with my left hand, and a lot of the fine detail and so forth was done with my right hand prior to the stroke. My right hand is still rather numb, and about a few weeks ago I wound up in a fall fracturing my right hand, and it's put me in a situation where I really can't sculpt with my right hand at all anymore. And so in this state, luckily I'm near completion on the sculptural phase of this piece.